In the US, we've just gone through a massive hurricane-style blizzard featuring 71-mile-an-hour winds, minus 60 wind chill factor, and covering at least 19 states with over a foot of snow. In fact, some areas that usually get nothing, maybe a mere dusting, got over a foot of snow down in the South, North Carolina, and places like that. It's never been seen before in recent times. Now, this happened years ago in the past, but it just hasn't happened in a long time, so it caught a lot of people by surprise. Is it natural or is it global warming? That's the big question. I think the answer is going to surprise you. But what won't surprise you is that there's two sides to Snowmageddon. On the one side, Donald Trump and his administration and scientists say that climate change is a hoax, it's a lie, and Snowmageddon is just another big snow story. And we've had them before and we'll have them again. Now, on the other side, climate scientists say that Snowmageddon is a symptom and that similar storms have happened in the past, but they're now tied to global warming and accelerated moisture and heat in the atmosphere. So I've been studying and working in climate change and global heating for over 40 years. And I'm here to explain to you today what Trump and his administration are telling us and what the climate scientists are telling us on the other hand. Because I understand climate science, I understand the information behind both of their positions, and here at Life Success Tools, my goal is to help you get the information, the knowledge, and the insights you need so you can understand the world around you better and so you can make better decisions for your life. So I'm going to share my insights, what I understand and what I know about both sides, and then let's figure out what's next. So when we look at what the Trump administration and the president are saying, that we've always had weather changing, that carbon dioxide is good for plants and the planet, that there's no big problem to deal with right now, that's their position. And there's quite a number of people who would support that position. In fact, there's a lot of people out there who write long dissertations and write books and go to great lengths to put the pieces together for a puzzle that most people don't understand. And for those people who take that point of view, it does make sense in a nutshell. For example, if we look at the height of a child between the age of 5 and 6, we think that humans don't grow very much. But if we take that same child and we look at that child between the age of 1 and, say, 24, we can see that humans do grow quite a bit over time. It's similar with climate change. If we take a very narrow perspective and we shorten the number of things that we look at, we're going to get an opinion that says, maybe this isn't real. Maybe we shouldn't spend all this time, effort, and money researching it and maybe trying to avoid it because it's not a big deal. Humans don't grow very much. Climate doesn't change very much. It's always changed, but not that much. So we shouldn't have to worry about it. Moreover, given that we want to prosper as a country, we want to grow economically, we want to invest in AI and all these other new things, microgrid, and new technologies and everything else, there's a big push to ignore anything around climate because of the consequences and the cost involved with remediating it and adapting to it, and instead pour that money into advanced technologies, an extra $500 billion for the military on top of the $1 trillion already, and then to do these things to help build American business and be more competitive in the world economy. And so that's a really important position for people who take the president's point of view. And they say, well, if we go down that rabbit hole with these climate scientists, as they say, then what's going to happen is we're going to fall behind in the world. The Chinese will take over all the markets. Other people will take over the modern technologies. We won't have the capital to invest. And we're just going to fall behind because we're following this sort of leftist, green, weenie kind of belief about what's happening in the climate. And so from their point of view, it's radically justified to ignore it, to cut funding for it, to say, just another big snowstorm. And yeah, it's a bad one and we'll deal with it and send the National Guard out to plow the roads and so forth. But we don't want to really go any further than just saying it's another big snowstorm like the one we had 12 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. So that's their position. Now, on the other side, there's some people with incredible credentials in science, multiple degrees in climatology, cryoscience, which is ice science, paleoclimatology, which is looking back at the climate over millions of years, and all sorts of other multiple areas of science that review and then put together the data and try and get a snapshot, sort of a snapshot across time of what's happened with climate and what's happened with the temperature of the Earth and the things that cause the temperature of the Earth to go up or down. And these scientists have an incredible amount of peer-reviewed data from all around the world. So again, they're saying it's not China, it's not a Chinese hoax, it's not designed to cause and hurt the American economy to go down, but instead that there is demonstrable mountains of evidence showing that the climate has heated primarily from the dramatic increase in greenhouse gases, that's carbon dioxide and methane, right, that have been released from burning fossil fuels and mining fossil fuels and so forth since largely the Industrial Revolution. And their position now is that the Earth is at a level of heating that hasn't been seen for 1,000,000 years, and that human civilization didn't grow up in a world that's that hot and that unpredictable weather-wise, that we've been really blessed for the last 10, 12,000 years where human civilization has arisen, in Mesopotamia and so forth, at the beginning of agriculture and domestication of animals, that this regularity and smoothness of the climate and the atmospheric gases made it so that humans could spread all over the earth and have massive, sustainable, predictable cereals, which is rice, corn, wheat, oats, barley, etc., which has allowed us to grow an incredible civilization and spread to over 8.2 billion people, right? So that predictability, that certainty, that understanding where food can grow, when it can grow, how to grow it, that's really predictable. What those scientists have shown us now is that we've left the predictable zone. Things are no longer predictable. So while the Earth is heating more and more now, we can prove that and show that with records and documentation, science documentation. The fact is that it's making the weather more predictable. So let's separate. Climate is what happens over a long period of time, right? Like the Mediterranean climate is warm. The Scandinavian climate is cold. The Gulf of Mexico, or Gulf of America, if you will, climate is warm and moist. The climate of Alaska is cold. But on any given day, there's been days when Anchorage, Alaska is warmer than Miami, Florida. So that's weather, right? Weather's what happens day to day, climate's what happens over time. Now, here's the really important thing to know, that the scientists are telling us that we predict that as the temperatures change radically, as the climate changes and the whole Earth heats up, you're going to see more variability. Let me give you a really clear example. You may have had a top when you were a kid, whether it was one that had a string on it and you pull it and it just spins, or whether it's one that you spun and then it spins and so forth. But one of the things with tops is that they spin and they move very slowly and very carefully. They just don't move very much at first. But then they begin to lose their power and they begin to wobble and then they fall down. And so what happens in climate is climate has had this predictability where the Earth has a certain spin to it, that the jet stream around the top is like a top. It spins up top. There's one in the south as well. They spin with the Earth spinning and the winds. And they've been very predictable for about the past 11, 12,000 years. And that's kept very cold at the top and the bottom of the planet and very nice and yummy and warm in the middle and hot sort of in the desert areas. That's been predictable. What's happened now, this extra CO2 and methane and all the pollution we put into the atmosphere, that little bit has caused it to be so that warming has created a wobble at the top and the bottom of the Earth. So now it's these wavy lines where these storms come down and go up, or where the heat spikes come up and go down. That's a lot of science, a lot of sciencey science right there for you. But fundamentally, the increase in moisture, the increase in heat, the increase in unpredictability and the wobbling of the atmosphere is causing storms like Snowmageddon to happen now. But you say, well, what happened before? We had these before. Yes, before the Earth was much cooler. 100 years ago, the Earth was much cooler, much more stable. So big snowstorms were predictable. They came with regularity and so forth. But if you'll notice, in the past, say, 40 years, the Earth has gotten a lot warmer. I can tell you, looking out my office window here, that I can see the differences in the warming. In fact, I used to measure when the first frost would come in Portland, Oregon every fall, since I've been here for 36 years. And I can tell you it used to come in November. Our first frost this year came at the end of January. I can tell you that that's radically different. I can see the difference. There's already bugs outside that shouldn't be here until March, April, because it's been so warm. Now, again, that's just a microclimate of Portland, but fundamentally this is happening all across the planet. And so Snowmageddon, according to the scientists, is an impact from this radical variability in the planet that's going on because we've disrupted it. Sort of like the way you have cool, calm water on a pond, and then you start splashing about and there's waves everywhere. That's what we've done. Now, again, the president and his administration would tell you that a couple of degrees don't really matter, and who doesn't like a couple more sunny days and some warm weather, right? I can tell you, living in Portland, Oregon, I appreciate a little more sunshine, a little more warmth. And here's the problem. That distracts us from the truth. We all know, if you're a parent or if you know kids, that Normally, they should have a 98.6 Fahrenheit temperature. That's a normal, healthy temperature. But just a couple of degrees more, and your child goes up to 103 degrees, and you're a little worried. And in fact, you're really worried. It shouldn't be that high. 101, 102, but 103, and you're getting really a little bit worried. And in fact, we all know, as the scientists are telling us, this is something to worry about, that just a couple of degrees does make a difference to the whole planet. And that the crazy variability that happens with the more distribution of that temperature and that heat across the planet cause a problem. So imagine now your child's temperature goes to 103 and you're thinking, well, maybe it'll go down, put them in an ice bath, cold washcloth in their face, but it goes to 104 and now 105. You know what you're doing? You're taking them to the emergency room if you can. You're taking them to do whatever you have. You're pouring ice buckets into the tub and putting them in it and holding them down, not their face, but their whole body down there to cool them off, because you know that's a terminal temperature. Well, climate scientists are trying to tell us that these signs of these super heat waves from just a few years ago, all the forest fires that take millions of acres out, that the temperatures that drop radically and these big Snowmageddon hurricane style things happening now, which shouldn't be happening, that's a sign that our planet's temperature is like your child's. It's going above 103 and we're in trouble. And so the president would have us ignore it. His administration would have us ignore it. It's not a problem. But you as a parent know that when your child's temperature gets up to 103 and keeps going up, that you get real worried, and you should be. And that's what's happening with our climate right now. Global heating is accelerating. It's going off the charts. The last time we had this level was, I think, 3 million years ago. And we weren't having agriculture then supporting 8.2 billion people. Back in the early 2000s, when I worked in technology, and in fact worked quite a bit with the Department of Defense, and I had a lot of friends who were in the military zone and national security and things like that, that they were very concerned about those issues and the protection of the United States from disruption and things like that. And they used to call me the Green Hawk, because what I said was, if the world destabilizes due to climate and hundreds of millions of people are on the move because of mass migration, and you begin to lose crops, and there's famines, and there's civil wars and political disruption and everything else, that's bad for American national security. So I'm going to agree with the president and his administration that national security is important, that the success and well-being of the United States economy is important, that we want to be able to be a global superpower and take care of our country and our citizens, and then take care of the rest of the world after we've done that to the best extent we can. And that position, while valid and I support it, is completely anathema to the idea of saying climate change is a hoax. Climate change is the number one national security long-term, and by long-term here I'm saying 5 years, right? Long-term problem that we're going to face, because the disruption that will be created from global heating and all of the consequences is enough to radically disrupt the American economy, the world economy, and our national security. So short-term, sure, Snowmageddon, it's a snowstorm. Long-term, it's a sign of impending disaster that we need to pay attention to. And if we don't, it's like your child's temperature going up to 106 degrees Fahrenheit. You don't want that. So let me give you a couple of things that you can do and understand this is not all doom and gloom. The fact of the matter is we have everything we need to deal with this problem, or this series of problems, or the predicament, meaning the condition or situation. We have everything we need right now. We can address it if we want. You have that capacity now. There's a ton of things we can do. The technology is there. The social structure is there. It's just the public will, knowledge, and education we need together, all of us, to understand these things, to understand the science, so that we don't think it's a hoax. In fact, we address it, that it's a really serious issue for you individually, for us as a country, for us as a world, because our child's temperature can't get to 105, 106. We can't allow it, but we can take action. That's why I built this channel. That's why I made it for you. Please like and subscribe down below. Share this video if it's meaningful to you. And most importantly, I want to hear your opinion down below. What do you think? Is it a hoax, or is it something to pay attention to?